Thank you for joining us this evening, a regular scheduled council meeting of the Park City City Council on June 9th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Marla, would you call the roll?
John Lanharen. George Glover.
Here.
Ben Salcedo. Here. Melvin Kerr.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
George Katz.
Here.
Randy Bailey. Here. Jim Schroeder. Here. Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Tonight, Pastor Bob Darnell is going to lead us in the invocation, and Councilwoman Randy Bailey is going to lead in the pledge. And everybody, please stand.
Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening, Lord, thankfulness in our hearts. Lord, those of us, Lord, that have faced things within our lives, God, we felt like that we would never face anything any more difficult. God, you brought us through in this city. Lord, you've given us protection. Lord, I thank you, Lord, for the men and the women, Lord, who are serving, Lord, on our police force. Lord, in the fire departments and the EMS. Lord, the men and the women who are working to make this city look presentable when people come to visit. Lord, I praise you, Father God, because, Lord, you look down upon our lives, Lord. You see the necessity in our lives, God. And, Lord, through your promise of your word, Lord, you said that you would give us the desires of our hearts. Tonight and this evening, Lord, I lead this committee in prayer, Lord, to ask you, Lord, to give wisdom, Lord, to city officials, to men and women who are making decisions, Father. Lord, we know that in our efforts, God, we want to be a city that is loved, liked, where people can feel that this is a place to call home. So, Lord, we praise you, Father. Lord, bless this assembly this evening. Lord, as the decisions are weighed and thoughts are presented, Lord, let your grace, your love, and your mercy, Father, flow in every life and every individual, Lord. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. John has lit up. John, I would ask Ben has come to me earlier and asked for item 8 that he requested to be on the agenda, that he would be okay with removing that. I would ask that we change the wording on item 8 to discuss the 4th of July fireworks in the park, if you would be okay with that change.
I guess I was just going to get an update on the status of our current permits, so if we could just have it as a quick item and maybe add this as item 9.
That would work for me too.
Quick, just the status of permits, like how many we've got and whatnot.
Okay.
So I'd ask that we add item 9 as discussion of the fireworks show in Park City.
Okay. And Ben, did you want a second?
Sure, second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to awards and presentations. And tonight, Dana gets the privilege of introducing our new employee to the Records Administrative Assistant.
Thank you, Mayor, Mann, and Council. And yes, it is always a privilege, and I appreciate the opportunity and very much appreciate that we have someone that is joining our team this evening. His name is Jacob Compton, and he comes to us with 3 years of police records management experience. So he has training and he has experience that is going to be very helpful to the city, and we're very happy to have him come aboard. So, Mr. Jacob Compton.
How you doing, Jacob?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Just wanted to say, you guys, thanks for the opportunity for bringing me on board. I don't have much to say. I get really nervous when I'm in front of a bunch of people too, so wasn't really expecting this.
All right. Well, we're excited to have you on board.
Welcome.
Part of the team.
Cool. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana. And that brings us to public forum, and tonight, Steve Brown signed up. Steve?
Greetings. Well, I was asked for an update on the 4th of July, so I'm going to do this in 2 parts. First of all, on behalf of July Events Team, we are hosting one event this year, which will be the Bob Robertson Family Car Show. That'll be at its normal place, normal time, 4th of July, at the front of the park at the Lions Building. So be sure everybody come out and check that out. Now, as far as the 4th of July goes, I've been asked a lot about the parade, the fireworks, so on and so forth, and the July Events Team will not be due to the coronavirus pandemic and all that. Everybody got a little bit spooked, and they voted not to have any events hosted this year just due to any possible ramifications on the committee. So with that said, I can tell you the July Events Team has officially canceled the parade, the fireworks, so on and so forth. Now, I would want to say on behalf of myself that I have talked to the fireworks shooters, at least one of them. One of them's told me we're probably too late to order fireworks, but the one we normally use say they can. I can check with either one. If you guys want to go forward with parts of the event, let me know. I can still get a fireworks show scheduled for you if that's the direction you guys want to go. I just can't override my committee and the board of directors, so I can volunteer to put it together, but I can't do it officially on my own behalf, so it'd have to just go through the city, and that'd be that. The concert, it was expressed to me, everybody thought it'd be a bad idea because of social distancing. It'd be a little tough to, but I can even, I can get you in touch with all them. We can get that all put together. Parade, I don't think we had anybody that thought that was really a great idea just because, but this meeting was 2 weeks ago, so I'm just here to see what you guys have to say and if you have any thoughts.
Well, we appreciate the update, and that's what we were looking for from you, and then we're going to have a discussion later about the fireworks in the park.
Okay. Any other questions for me?
George?
Yeah, Steve, I just want you to know your efforts putting this on, as long as you've been doing, is real appreciated. I've had a lot of positive comments in years past for the things that you've done, so I wanted you to know that your work has not gone unwanted, so thank you for all your efforts.
I did have one final thing. I would like to thank everybody for the opportunity. This will probably be my last time representing July Events Team, because this will be a Community Relations Board event next year, so if there's any way I can help them, I'll be more than happy to assist. But other than that, that's it for me. Anything else from anybody?
Tom?
I just wanted to say thank you too. So.
All right.
And Ben?
Yeah, Steve, I do want to say thank you to you, Bob, Sherry. Randy's put a lot of time into this as well. I mean, so many people have put in a lot of time over the years. And to see all that the July Events Team has done, I do want to say thank you all. I know it's been sacrificial, and you all have done it for nothing for many years, other than just the enjoyment of serving our community. And so to that, I want to say thank you to each one of you all, and please express to Bob and Sherry as well very much my gratitude.
Well, that and also all the previous members and volunteers we've had, we really have appreciated all the help from everybody. So, all right.
All right. Thank you, Steve. All right, that was it for public forum this evening, and we'll move on to staff reports from the city administrator. Sean?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a couple items to update you on. First of all, as far as COVID. For Sedgwick County, we've had just over 130 additional or new cases in the past month, bringing us up to a total of 660 for Sedgwick County, with 2 additional deaths. What I wanted to highlight is that is just over 1/1000% as far as the infection rate for those in the county, and less than 0.5% for those infected who have passed on. As far as city facilities, all employees returned to work on May 28th, and the facilities were opened up to the public on June 1st, except for the senior center. The senior center is scheduled to open up on July 6th. The court was scheduled to have their first docket this last Thursday on June 4th, but was canceled due to what was going on throughout the community on that day. It has since been rescheduled, and they'll have their first docket this Thursday. The parks have remained open, of course, throughout the pandemic, and Public Works is in the process now of getting some signs made up informing our residents that the playground equipment is now going to be open and that it's going to be sanitized twice weekly using My Shield, that chemical that we've got. It is a cleaner, deodorizer surface treatment used to help reduce the spread of the virus. Last time I reported that Sedgwick County was setting up a committee to determine the best way to distribute CARES Act funding among the local municipalities. The process is still early on, but we just received a notice of funding of opportunity and solicitation of information, which is nothing more than to say it's a simple survey looking to identify the type and size expenditures the cities have incurred and will be looking for reimbursements for. It's about an 8 to 10 page long survey, and staff will be filling it out over the next couple days and submitting it. It's a step in the right direction, and we'll keep council informed as we keep going. Next up, as far as 61st Street Bridge, we are coming to the end of construction. If you've driven on it here lately, the bridge, the main work on the bridge is done. At the end of this week, they'll be transitioning to placing meetings and working on the air cap intersection. And then they should be finally done by the end of June or the first week of July at the latest. So they're about 2 weeks ahead of schedule. As far as the 61st Street project, which is west of there, staff met with engineers to conduct a field check approximately 2 weeks ago. We did identify several areas which made sense to slightly shift some gears, and one of those areas was actually the project limits. It did make a lot of sense that the project limits were pretty much right around where the self-storage place is and Annie C's, and then went all the way out to the Valley Center floodway. That left about 500 foot from where we finished construction on the bridge to where we'd start construction for that. So we're shifting the project about 500 feet to the east, so that way it's all smooth, nice road from the bridge all the way to Prospect. That did result in some pluses and minuses to the bottom line, and we'll be bringing a full report and update to council here within the next couple of meetings. And then finally, I'd just like to add my own personal thanks or acknowledgement, actually, to the police department and the other local area agencies around. This past week, as many of you were aware of, there were potential or possible threats implied on social media, and our police department worked with other local agencies to come up with a solid game plan to display a formidable show of force. And I think that personally gave many people reason to pause or reconsider their plans. So again, I'd like to acknowledge our own Park City Police Department, as well as Keachai, Valley Center, Bel Air, Sedgwick County Sheriff's Department, and the Kansas Highway Patrol. That's it, Mayor.
George?
Well, first I'd like to publicly thank you for the POW flag. As I told you before, I don't think we should ever forget. You know, there's a lot of people that was called, sent. I know some of them have missing. Back in my day, there was a draft, and they were sent. They didn't ask to go there, and some of them never came home. We should never forget them, and I really appreciate that. And I would sure echo your thoughts on the police department, the sheriff's department, the Sheriff Easter, and all of his deputies that came up here. It's obvious the sheriff understands his duties, and they performed well, kept us safe, and I just think we ought to recognize all of them. I realize there was Highway Patrol and other people involved. To what extent, I don't know. But I just appreciate all of them.
Tom?
I need to apologize to Eric first because I haven't said a thing to him or anybody else in his staff. But I've noticed that other cities are allowing their operations employees to wear shorts at work, and I wonder if we'd looked at that and give people an opportunity to wear maybe a
I think there might be some HR
khaki shorts
and
or something
some
like that.
OSHA things.
Pardon?
There's some HR and OSHA things you should be aware of. That
okay.
Maybe.
But I didn't know if there was
sidebar
places that are
conversation.
appropriate that some of them could wear them.
Probably not right now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Like I said, I haven't talked to anybody. I just noticed I've been in other cities and seen shorts, and we don't have them here, so, okay.
Melvin?
Yeah, I was asked about the garage sales. Are they still on?
It happened.
Huh?
It happened.
It happened? Okay.
Yeah.
Someone was asking me about it today, and I said I wasn't sure when.
Yeah, they went off. I think we had over 68, 70 applications that came in.
And I noticed around the city, we need some mowing done. Is there a problem or along 53rd Street there? I talked to you earlier about that. And 69th Street there and Broadway.
No, sir, we don't have a particular problem. We do have that some people, for the first time, are recognizing that it is now their responsibility to mow those, and so code enforcement as well as our streets department and parks department are working with individual property owners. But I'm not aware of any specific problems. I'd be happy to talk with you afterwards about it.
Well, you know, I talked to you last council meeting about the around 53rd there. That's, you know, those weeds are about 4 foot tall there between the sidewalk and the road there.
Okay.
Is that property owners or is that our?
It's property owners, sir.
Okay. And when do we serve that notice to them?
I would have to get back with you on specifics.
Yeah, okay.
I would like to add what Melvin said. The city created a situation at 53rd and Primrose that made it inappropriate for anybody to try to mow it. So somebody has mowed around the perimeter, but the trees down in the ditch and the rocks and the weeds and everything else are just natural. And it's atrocious now. I don't know how you fix it, other than dig all the rocks out and redo the ditch. So we've created a situation there where the public can't take care of it.
Yes, sir. Specifically where you're talking about near 53rd and Primrose, we are addressing that at this time. We've had the engineer looking at it because the only appropriate way to take care of that is to take all the riprap out of it. And we realize that even though that is a personal property owner's responsibility, it was our doing that caused the particular problem, so we're going to be addressing that issue with staff.
When we redid the road, we told them we would fix that, and we didn't do it. So
yes, sir.
It's on us.
Okay. George?
Well, you know, part that I don't understand. I know from the center of the highway out to the little ditches, I thought that was our property.
Well, let's look at that. Okay.
Well, it seems to me like, you know, if they own it to the middle of the ditch, then from the blacktop to the middle of the ditch is ours, and those weeds are high.
Okay. So we'll look at that area and we'll bring it back to the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Not seeing any other discussion. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Ben?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
And Melvin?
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to new business, item 3, which is discuss and consider reappointment to the Stormwater Management Advisory Board of Gary Aldridge. And Gary didn't make it this evening. Said he's going to be here, but he's been a valuable resource on that board. Ben?
Yeah, I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve the reappointment of Gary Aldridge to the Stormwater Management Advisory Board with the term ending in June of 2022.
And Tom?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 4, which is discuss and consider the purchase of a street sweeper. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Street sweeping is not only for the safety of our residents and visually pleasing, it also removes debris from the gutter and roadside that would otherwise end up in the storm drain, causing water pollution, and ensures that we're in compliance with the MS4 program. We have pursued possibly partnering up with other cities in a combined purchase, and we also outsourced the street sweeping on 3 separate occasions and found that it was not timely enough and not economically viable to continue. Staff has researched numerous models and designs of street sweepers and narrowed it down to 2 that would work for the city. the Elgin Broom Badger at 208,159, and the Timco Model 600 at 246,26. This is unbudgeted to be paid out of the Special Streets and Highway Fund, and staff recommends the purchase of the Elgin Broom Badger. In the slideshow, I will explain why. And proposal, you have attached proposals from Key Equipment and Armor Equipment. Okay, option 1, Elgin Broom Badger. Pros, it is a mechanical type street sweeper, which means it doesn't rely on suction. It has brushes and a conveyor belt to bring items up into the hopper. It's the lower purchase cost at 208,159, and the shorter wheelbase, and that allows for tighter turning for our narrow streets. And like I said, it doesn't rely on suction, so therefore it's able to pick up large items, large bricks, bottles, and tree limbs. And the cons, well, the size of the hopper is a little bit small at 3.1 cubic yards. Next slide. We have a video here. Basically, what it's doing right now is it's got the water spray to keep the dust down. And as you can see, there's large items right there that normally would not be just sucked up. Basically, what's happening is that's being pushed towards the center conveyor, and the conveyor is bringing it up inside the hopper. And what's really neat about this one is it's got a rear mount broom. Cleans up any little items that are left over from the first pass. This video here is really impressive. Look at the size of those limbs. They're just going to be brought right up into the hopper. Option 2 is the Timco Model 600. Pros on this one, large hopper at 7.3 cubic yards. It allows a little bit more flexibility with this model because it has a rear mount suction hose. We could use that for cleaning the storm drain inlets, cleaning up little messes here and there. But cons, a little bit more expensive at $246.26, and it's a larger machine overall with a larger wheelbase, and it does reduce its turn radius. Now, like I said before, this is a regenerative air machine, which means it's got a big, large fan inside, which it blows air down and sucks up at the same exact time, which you can see a little bit on these heavy, wet leaves. Some of it does get spit back out, leaving debris on the road. That's why I'm not really convinced of this model, but it's definitely a great model, but I'd rather have the Elgin Broom Badger. And with this one, there's no rear broom as well. Second video. This one here, we're just testing its capabilities on picking up some sand. Does very well on that. Like I said before, it actually blows air down and then sucks it up at the same time. Gets all the fine grits out there, which is a little bit overkill. Normally in this type of model, you'd see like on a flight line or something like that, where you have to really get every little fine, minute pieces of debris out of the flight line. And as far as the brooms, maintenance items for both machines, the broom costs are the same, the replacement is the same. So on that side, you can see it does a very good job cleaning up the sand off that street right there. We actually took this model down towards in the horseshoe, and we had a little bit of trouble with the trees and stuff, just because it's of its size. It's very tall. And staff recommends the purchase of the Elgin Broom Badger, option 1. Any other questions, please?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
You've had some experiences in the past.
Yes.
With this, right?
With that, with 600, yes, sir.
Right. So this is something that I think is important for us to key on. You've had experience with that, and you liked that machine.
I've loved that machine until I saw the Elgin Broom Badger.
And that's the point that I wanted to get across, that I know this is the machine you came first that you wanted to make sure we looked at. And then when you had a mind change, it was like, whoa, you
Yes,
really
sir.
like the other one. So I think that speaks volumes too, just with your experience that you've had with them in the past.
Yeah, the Elgin Broom Badger is an impressive machine. I mean, the turning radius on that thing, I could turn it around right here in this. I mean, it's a great machine.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? George.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Eric, as far as a need for Park City, how often do you think you'd be using this Badger?
When we initially get it, I'd like to have it running continuously until we get the streets back to where they're supposed to be. But after that, it would be quarterly. That's pretty much my plan.
So in years past, you've been contracting out, other folks have come in?
Yes, sir.
And how often were they doing it?
We did it quarterly with them as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Brandy?
My only question is, when we did the street sweeping and we contracted it out, what were we paying for each time they came out? Do you know?
It was one time they told us it would be done in 2 days. It actually took 4 days, and that was $4,000. So,
If I may, when I first got hired on, this was one of the questions that council had asked previously. It was, we had an older street sweeper machine that the cabin had rusted through, and people driving it, it just was not conducive. So we got rid of that piece of machinery. Over the last year and a half, it's not that we've been dragging our feet. We have looked at every possibility to figure out what would our return on our investment be. We first approached Bel Air and Keachai, kind of figuring let's do a three-way partnership between the three communities. Bel Air had equipment. Keachai does not. We did not. And was wondering if there was a way that we could help offset their costs of their machinery and help do that. And quite honestly, Bel Air wasn't interested at the time. Keachai is still interested in partnering with us if we buy our own piece of equipment. So then we contracted with Sillicin, came out and listened and showed them what we wanted to do. First time they said, yep, it's going to take us about 2 days. It was 4 or 5 days later before they were completely done. We were still having some concerns, and we wanted to be fair to them. They underestimated the project at first, and they said, give us another shot. We gave them 2 additional more shots, and so then we started looking at it. It made a lot of sense when it was about $3,000 or $4,000 per time, but as it started creeping up, I think the last time was nearly $7,000 per time. That's when we said, and then, oh, by the way, the price of the Elgin comes in, which is about $40,000 less than what we had originally envisioned that the cost of this was going to be. So when we started to do the math on it, that's when we said, this makes sense for us now. Both machines are excellent machines. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Both machines should easily last 15 to 20 years. So there's definite a return on the investment with us purchasing it now.
and this will be parked at Sherwood underneath the overhang as well. So.
Yeah, and I think too, another thing, just in the contracting, we had multiple complaints that we got to deal with that on that, and we actually had somebody come and speak to the council and address us about how bad of a job that was. So, Ben?
On these machines there, when I know it can always be different, but maintained regularly, properly and everything, what's the general lifespan?
Approximately 15 years.
15 years, okay, so easily at $7,000, if we're paying $7,000 a pop right now to have them cleaned quarterly, that's $28,000 a year. At 15 years, that's a lot of money. So having something that's our own that we can even, if we're looking at partnering possibly with Keachai in some way, shape, or form, that's also going to offset some of the cost for that. Plus, it puts it in our inventory rather than somebody else's. So
exactly, and we can use it at any time we want. I mean, to clean up job sites, to clean up whatever. Someone calls, hey, this road looks bad. We can go ahead and take care of it right then. So. And
I like the idea that you all talked about running it continuously, getting it started, because our streets do need a little bit of help. And I know it's not because of neglect or forgetfulness. It's just working through this process. So I appreciate that very much. That's all I have.
Okay, Tom?
Does this thing have a heater in the water? You're talking about putting it under cover, but it'd still be exposed to bad weather? You have to
Correct.
drain it?
We will have to winterize it during the winter.
So it has to be drained out?
Yes,
See, that's
sir.
been one of the issues in the past.
Yes.
About wanting to get it out today, but you can't because it's freezing outside or going to freeze.
You can still run it. I mean,
Right,
you just
you gotta
run it
drain
without the water. I mean, it'll be a little bit more dusty, but
Okay.
you can still run it during the winter.
Okay. I was going to go ahead and make a motion, if I could, and then we can finish discussion. I would move that we approve a quote from Key Equipment and Supply for a 2020 Elgin Broom Badger in the amount of $208,159 to be paid out of the Special Street and Highway Fund. So,
George, did you want a second for discussion?
Yeah, I'll second it, but I did have a question, and you might have already answered it, because I know every time we have an ice storm or stuff, there's always a lot of sand. That quarterly deal is not carved in stone, is it?
Oh, no, sir. No, sir. What would happen during snow removal, we do put a lot of sand salt on the road.
Right.
What we'll do is after the snow event has happened, we'll come back and sweep up all the sand and be done with it right then.
Well, I know that's kind of dangerous for bicycles and motorcycles.
Sure is.
And there's a lot of people got bicycles. I see Walmart and all the bike shops have sold out during this pandemic, so there's going to be a lot more of them out there. I appreciate it, Eric. I support it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Next item is item 5, which is discuss and consider an ordinance to authorize the financing of the Broadway sewer extension. Sean?
Yes, sir. Back on May 12th, the council approved a contract with K.E. Miller Engineering for the design and engineering of the Broadway sewer extension, which is a 12-inch gravity main from 77th Street to the lift station, and then an 8-inch force main from the lift station to a 12-inch gravity main on Prospect Street. Attached is an ordinance authorizing the improvements and delineating the project limits, as well as providing for the cost and/or reimbursement to be payable from the proceeds of general obligation bonds of the city issued under the authority of the Act. As we mentioned back in May, it is an unbudgeted CIP, and we recommend utilizing temporary financing subsequent to the issuance of general obligation bonds.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Sean? Ben?
Sure, Sean. Just for sake of public awareness, there is, looking at this project here, I've had some people ask me when they saw just that kind of what had happened back in May, are there any other options that provide a more cost-effective solution? Or is this really just the best, I mean, as far as cost goes and with K.E. Miller and everything?
Trying to figure out the best way to answer that as far as cost-effective. Building the sewer extension line is pretty straightforward. I mean, the pipe that we utilize right now, we only have sewer service as far as the trailer park. That's about it. Going farther north to 77th Street and beyond, we don't have sewer system anywhere along Broadway. And so that's the reason why we did this, so that it opens up possibilities of what could occur along that corridor. Also, at the same time, this will help mitigate and actually make our system better, because right now our system, the way it was put together over the years, it gravity flows from the trailer park down to the lift station, and then it goes in a force main from the lift station under Interstate 135 over to the old sewer plant. where it gets picked up by another lift station and gets pumped back across the highway and eventually makes it down to the sewer distribution or to the sewer plant, treatment plant. By doing this, we're going to make some modifications to where instead of going back across the highway, it's going to go from the lift station just down over to Prospect so it can gravity feed into the sewer treatment facility, which should make the lift station at the old sewer plant operate more effective and more efficiently. So I do believe that this is the best case option for us. It makes a lot of sense, and it opens up again all those businesses along Broadway, including existing businesses that have been relying on their own septic system. They could now tie into the city septic system and it'd be available.
You can explain it much better and say it much better than I can explain it, so I appreciate that very much.
Okay, Jim?
I don't have any questions, so I would, just lost my place here, move to approve ordinance 1095-2020 of the City of Park City, Kansas, authorizing providing for the construction of main sewer improvements in the city and providing for the payment of the costs thereof.
And Tom?
I'm going to second that with a comment. We have a major water line that runs all the way up Broadway, and this is going to enhance that and open up all that area in there where it could be developed. So,
all right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. Marla, would you call the roll?
John Lanier.
Aye.
George Glover.
Aye.
Ben Salcetta.
Aye.
Melvin Kerr.
Aye.
Tom Jones.
aye.
George Capps.
Aye.
Brandy Bailey.
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye. And that ordinance passes 8-0. Thank you, Marla. That brings us to item 6, which is discuss and consider approval of a petition for consent to the annexation of property approximately 78 acres on the east side of Hydraulic. Sean?
Yes, sir. Just recently, staff received a petition for and consent to annexation form from the property owner of the land located at the north one-half of the southwest quarter, section 15-26-1E. The tract is a total of 78.625 acres in size. The request is in connection with a third-party intent to rezone and plat the property upon purchasing. Staff as far as the physical impact, the 2020 appraised value of the property and the land is only at $22,380, and staff recommends approval of the ordinance.
Okay.
And there's a aerial, I believe. There we go.
Okay. Tom?
This kind of finishes out a city line along there down from 61st Street to Hydraulic, and it's part of it that I think probably should have been in a long time ago. With their requesting an annexation, I would move that we approve the ordinance 1096-2020, an ordinance including and incorporating certain land within the city limits and boundaries of the City of Park City, Kansas.
Okay. Ben?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. John?
Question, I'm sorry, I was reading this. Did you say that everything south of that to 53rd Street is already been annexed?
Yes, sir, it is. Right now, it's Park City on 3 sides. Only the east side is not Park City.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. Marla, would you call the roll?
John Lanier.
Aye.
George Glover.
Aye.
Ben Salcetta.
Aye.
Melvin Kerr.
Aye.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
George Capps.
Aye.
Brandy Bailey.
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye. And that ordinance passes 8-0. Thank you, Marla. That brings us to item 7, discuss and consider an ordinance amending section 14-205 of the municipal code relating to on-street parking restriction in the city. Doug, let's free some people.
Mayor and council, this proposed amendment is in response to some concerns expressed by the council in the past about certain parking restrictions in our city where there's parking on one side of a residential street and no parking on the opposite side. As a result of those concerns and questions, staff did an inventory of our streets and looked at the feasibility of adjusting some of those current prohibitions. And the ordinance in front of you, I'll let the chief and Public Works maybe address questions, but what you see in front of you is a deletion, a removal of 9 prohibitions from the existing no parking ordinance that we have in our municipal code. And those are all one-side prohibitions that have been pulled out. So now the result of that is on those streets, there's parking on both sides.
All right. Sean, you want to start first and then let Chief? You going to let Chief go? All right, Chief.
Mayor and council members, as Doug said, the Public Works did a street inventory, which as part of that included measurement of all the streets in the city as far as their width. I know that some concerns were raised by Councilmember Capps in past meetings about the concentration of one-sided parking in residential areas in one particular area of town, particularly in Ward 3. And what we found is that that is exactly correct. The biggest majority of it's north of 61st Street, west of Hydraulic. Those streets, there's a couple that are south of 61st Street and west of Hydraulic. That's where it's primarily located. All those streets that have the one-sided parking are all, that are in this ordinance that are stricken, are all 22 feet in width. So just to illustrate this, the diagram that's up on the screen there, what this shows, it says 25 feet 8 inches. That's, if you notice, that's from the edge of the curb to the edge of the curb. So the measurement of the street that's listed on the street inventory, in this case, it's the blacktop, essentially. So it's the black part there that's actually 22 feet wide. But you have to consider into that also the curb and the gutter, because people can actually park and do park in the gutter. So they, by law, they need to park within 1 foot of the edge of the curb. So this diagram shows like a normal sized pickup truck and a passenger car that are parked within 1 foot of the curb. The truck, Sean called, and I was there for the call also, Sedgwick County Fire Department, and we asked for their input on this. That illustrates the largest piece of equipment that they have, the largest fire engine and a piece of equipment that they would need to move on our streets. So you can see in the illustration here, if people are legally parked, in other words, they're not more than 1 foot from the curb, and the largest piece of fire equipment comes through here, in this illustration, it would have 8 inches between that yellow that's showing there, 8 inches of clearance. So they can navigate streets that are 22 feet wide, where we have the one-sided parking, if you have vehicles on both sides, if in a situation that's illustrated where it's shown here. There's a couple other illustrations, and maybe Ted could pull those up. This illustrates the same thing. It's just like an aerial view in this case. So trucks parked on one side, cars on the other. That's just for illustration. Same fire truck, if it moves through there. If everybody's legally parked, it can get through. The next illustration is a 26-foot wide street. So the vast majority of our residential streets are either 22 or 26 feet in width. This illustrates a 26-foot wide street, which an example of that would be East and West Parkview, north of 61st Street. Those are 26-foot wide streets. So you can see that fire truck doesn't have any problem passing through. You can't have two cars that can go opposite directions and pass each other on a 22-foot wide street that has parking on both sides. Just to go back to the size of the streets, 22-foot wide streets, we have 39 streets or sections of streets that are 22 feet wide, and we have 40 that are 26 feet wide. So, and again, that's the vast majority of our residential streets. A lot of the other widths are like in the single digits of numbers of streets. What's stricken in the ordinance is leaving, just for clarification, it leaves the access roads as one-sided parking along 61st Street and along Hydraulic. The reason for that being the visibility when people try to pull out onto the onto 61st or onto Hydraulic. They really need that visibility. It also leaves the one-sided parking during certain hours along Grove Park because of the safety that's involved there. There's another section of streets, Mobile Drive, in that general area, which would, if you're familiar with that, would be if you come off of Applebee's and you're driving back to the east, back towards West Parkview, that would be the Mobile Drive area. That is kind of, if you're familiar with the area, it's kind of a shortcut to get to Quick Trip and to the whole restaurant district up there. So it's quite a bit of traffic. Because of the amount of traffic and the curves in the streets, I would recommend that we leave that. Any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
I know George brought this up, wanted us to look at this, and at that time we even had a discussion about making more one-sided parking, which I'm totally against, because it's really unfair to a homeowner that can't park in front of their own flipping house. I mean, that's just ridiculous that we don't allow people to park in front of their house. I get more phone calls in this area about neighbors beating each other home to park in front of somebody else's house. And let's free these people up so people can park in front of their houses and enjoy their homes more. Tom?
Well, my question is, and you showed it on the 22 feet, you showed a pickup and a small car. What happens if you got two pickups or a dually sitting there? Is there going to be any kind of restriction or a sign?
The fire truck wouldn't fit. It would not fit in that circumstance.
Well, I understand, but if it's free parking, they can park anywhere they want to, we're going to have an obstruction. You probably won't be able to get a car through.
If you have two, like F-250, say you have two F-250 pickups parked side by side, or if someone parks illegally, parks further from the curb than they're supposed to, fire truck may not be able to get through. That's correct.
So we are going to have an issue, or potentially going to have an issue with that.
I think when we looked at the F-250, wasn't the width pretty much the same as the F-150 if the window, if the mirrors
unless
were
you have a
folded?
dually, you're correct. If you have a
Mirrors
dually,
weren't- If a dually would be a problem.
if you notice on the demonstration or the first graphic, it just came up with 7 foot, and it said 7 foot for a truck and 7 foot for a car. That's the average.
Okay.
If you have two dualies, you're going to have a particular problem. I mean, we worked with the fire department on it and said, do you guys have a recommendation? That's your fire apparatus. You need to. And they're like, look, we're not going to tell you what you need to do.
Okay.
We don't care. If that's the way that your council wants to go, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a 26-foot wide street or a 22-foot wide street. If you have cars that are opposing each other and there's parking on both sides, there's going to be a conflict.
Right.
But that's okay. People wait for the gaps and they're mindful and, hey, come on through. And
well, I want to be as open with parking as we can be,
Yes,
but
sir.
I don't want to create an impediment so you can't get a fire truck through there when somebody needs one. So, and that's why I'm bringing up the dually.
Yes,
I
sir.
know the mayor and I have discussed that in the past, and it wasn't resolved, but we talked about it on some of the narrow streets and stuff. If you got a pickup on one side and you've got a 350 something sitting on the other side, you aren't going to get through with a big truck. So it's not just fire, it's any kind of delivery truck or street sweeper probably would even have.
the only thing about that is we'll notice it ahead of time to make sure that they move their cars. But you're right, the fire engine can't do that. So,
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
And I think there's common sense here too. I mean, these people have been living under the penalty of not being able to park in front of their own house. And if we have somebody that's sitting there that's not parking right, all you have to do is go over there and knock on the door and say, hey, listen, if you want to keep it this way, park the dually in the driveway and stick the Honda Civic out in the street.
I don't want to be negative, I just want to say there's an impact there that people need to be aware of.
Well, it's an easy thing to go up to the door, knock on somebody and say, hey, this is what we're doing, but we're trying to free you so you can park in front of your own house. George?
Well, you know, for years, I don't know of any time there was an issue with this. I don't know how this came about. I think past councils, I think someone wanted to do this. But I go back to the people that live there. You know, think about it. If you live on one side of one of those streets, the people that live across the street from you, they can park in front of their house, but you can't park in front of your own house. How do you think those people feel? You know, in this country, we're supposed to be fair. And, you know, if the city wants to do that, then the city should widen the streets. You know, if they want to have all this like that, they should go in and widen the street. It's these people that bought their homes years ago, they bought it with the understanding. Then all of a sudden, the city comes along and bans it. It's not fair. It's not right. And, you know...
Let's make it right, George.
Okay. I move to approve ordinance number 1097-2020, amending section 14-205 of the Municipal Code of the City of Park City, Kansas, designating streets and sections of streets where vehicular parking was prohibited, and repealing the original of said section 14-205.
Ben, did you want to second that?
Yes, for discussion, just real quick, I just want to reiterate and support what you and George have said on this. I mean, we can look at situations, the chances of two dualies being out there at one time in the exact same location of a fire is you might have a better chance of getting coronavirus. Now, I don't know. But the point being is that we can look at extreme situations and circumstances and maybe try to apply those, but as the general rule, those aren't circumstances that we're dealing with. And to try to penalize, continue to penalize the people there in Ward 3 because of an extreme possibility, I think would be a disservice to them. And I appreciate what George has been, I mean, that was the very first thing I've heard when I went and knocked doors in that ward in my district was, why can't you park on both sides of the street? And I'll be honest with you, it's hard to see those signs too that tell you can only park on one side of the street. And the first time I went down there, I was parked illegally. And a very kind person at the door said, you need to go move your car. So I went out there and moved it. But I think this is the right thing to do. So I appreciate, George, your work on this, the city staff on this. I think it's time to free the people.
John?
So I was just going to say, I was on the council and Tom was too back when we made this ordinance, which I can remember. The fire department may now say they don't want to tell us what to do, but they wanted them. They were here at the podium, and when they were taking delivery on their new whatever it was, they were telling us that it wouldn't fit through there. And there was a long discussion about it and other streets that we need to do it on, and they only recommended those streets. So that's why we did it. So that's the answer. So maybe that truck shrunk. Great, let's take it away.
Okay, George?
Well, I'll admit, I was the squeaky wheel or the rebel or whatever, but I will tell you, I just tell Sean and the chief and you, Mayor, I just appreciate all your work on this, and I think as citizens are going to be ecstatic, especially those that are banned from parking in front of their own homes now. They're going to love the ability that this gives them, and I just thank you. Appreciate it. I know it's a lot of work.
Ben?
Sorry, just one quick question here on this. So after our vote tonight, so that for those listening in Ward 3 and the affected streets there, what's the timeline as far as this going into effect?
Publication, which should be on
June 11th.
June 11th?
June 11th.
We take the signs down tomorrow?
Yeah. This one's pretty easy. Yeah.
That way those listening and paying attention know that have a good target date.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and it's time to free some people. Marlo, would you call the roll?
Aye.
George Glover.
Aye.
Ben Salcetta.
Aye.
Melvin Kerr.
Aye.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
George Capps.
Aye.
Brandy Bailey. Aye. Jim Schrader.
Aye.
And that passes 8-0. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Marlo. That brings us to item 8, which is discuss the 2020 fireworks permits. Sean? Do you have anything you want to, well, I guess John, kind of asked for an update. So, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just curious, like, we had a citizen come in that was a past vendor of fireworks. I'm just curious, like, where we're at now, with the increase we did on our stands. How many permits do we have, or have you had any, hey, I'll be back tomorrow, or are we down?
So as of right now, today, we have 4 paid for. One of them was a new person that's never been in Park City that had no problem writing the check, said okay. And then another one had 1 tent last year and added a second tent this year. So as of now, we have 4 paid for permits, and we also have interest that I don't think is on somebody that hasn't got back with us on. They just wanted to collect some more information.
And what did we have last year? What was our total?
It was 6.
6 last year.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on this one? No? Tom?
It doesn't have to do with the ordinance, but at one point we decided that we were going to go look at what was going to be allowable in Park City. Are we going to do that still, or is it too late? We had discussed at one meeting about what would be legal here.
We did that.
We already did that, sir, as far as what type of fireworks.
Yeah.
And we actually have a prohibition against certain types. If I remember correctly, it was predicated on weight. We had talked with all the fireworks vendors at the time, and they said, you realize that we have 500 stands in the state of Kansas, and I think I sell probably 30 boxes out of all 500 stands, and so there was no problem with that. So it was a fireworks that Councilmember Capps had brought up that has a residue that falls down of a certain size and weight, and those are now prohibited according to our ordinance.
And then we also had the lanterns too.
Yes.
So we had a whole conversation.
Yep.
Concussion bombs are still going to exist and stuff.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Lanterns? Did we allow lanterns? I'm trying to remember. I remember
No.
a great
No,
discussion.
we prohibited
No, we
those.
prohibited those. That was another one that we took out. All right, that pretty much wraps up that discussion for item 8. So we'll move on to item 9, which is discuss the July 4th fireworks in the park. So the understanding is that the 4th of July committee is not going to do that fireworks show because there's a little concern about some liability on that. We've already budgeted for that. So I just want to have a discussion with the council. Is the council interested in hosting that fireworks show and then just paying the vendor directly? So I just kind of want to hear some, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking? George?
I know one thing, it brings a lot of people out. A lot of people are very interested in it. I know you go up to the park, I mean, it fills the place up, so I know our citizens are interested.
Sure, you would be in support of that?
Yes.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I also would be in support of it. I know a lot of folks, like George said, come out to see it every year, and they kind of look forward to it at the first of the year to when we have it. So I think we ought to have something for our residents, and in doing so, I think we ought to at least have that, plus we have the car show as well, so I'd be in favor of this.
Okay. I think it's a good idea that we do it. And there's a couple of different ways to look at it. It does tend to gather a crowd, but pretty much everybody in the city can enjoy it. I see multiple families climb up on the roofs of their homes and sit up there and watch them. So what I like about this is people that have a choice, and if they want to drive to the park and they want to be there surrounded by other people and doing it, they can make that decision, and that's fine. And then it doesn't impact people that don't want to be around a crowd or anything, that we're inviting them around their houses. And there's other ways that people can enjoy them from different locations within the city. It's something we've done. I would hate to see that the only thing we do this year is the car show. So I think it would be a good idea to at least do the fireworks display like we have in years past. It's one of the reasons why we do collect the funds off of those tents to go towards that. We've already budgeted for it. And if it's simply a transaction we need to make to pull this off, and Steve's already offered to get us connected, I say we go ahead and move forward with that. Anybody else? John?
So I'm just wondering this, like, since we're not spending money on parade and all the other stuff we're doing, is it possible for us to have, like, if we do a show, do something like a little bigger show or a little more to it, or maybe a Friday and a Saturday night show since it's on a Saturday that would break the crowd up? I mean, I'm just trying to kind of think what would be a better, I mean,
Steve, go ahead and come on up.
Sounds like Wichita canceled theirs, so I'm just wondering, like, you know, what could we do? Because there's a lot of people in even surrounding towns that came to our 4th of July celebration, but I think we obviously, with social distancing and stuff still going on, do we really want to pack it that much as it is? So maybe if we did it 2 nights, or I don't know, I'm just trying, what's our best? Yeah.
Yeah, a couple options we looked at for this year. We knew this was going to be our last year going in, so we had a really, really cool show planned. We've got one vendor. I don't know if we can get them or not, but I can sure find out quickly. They offer a laser plus fireworks show, which is actually going to be our plan for this year. That show is a $10,000 show. Our existing vendor, we might be able to get a break if we were to do 2 nights. The vendor we've been using, he gets $5,500 to $6,000 per show. You know, I would imagine we could negotiate quite a deal this year because obviously a lot of cities have canceled on them and they're looking for all the shows they can get. So we do have 2 options, or really 3, you know. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts, or I know Ben's talked to the vendor that does the laser show, I believe, have you not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been talking since the meeting back in March or January when they presented.
Yeah, I've been in touch with them. They've really held on well, but all of our vendors have, because we've been trying to pull off whatever we could, and you know, this is where we ended up at, but it's not probably the optimum choice. So I'm just happy you guys are coming forward on this, and because that's what I was hoping would happen. So does anybody want to get back with me, or do you?
I think it'd be fun maybe too if we could pull off some food trucks too in that same evening. If we could get some to come. You might not be able to with the holiday, but it would be worth trying.
With Red, White, and Boom canceled, there's going to be a lot of food trucks available, I would think.
So I think if we could get food trucks out there and have something available, maybe even have them parked sporadically throughout the town where multiple people in the city can do it that may not want to go to a park and be surrounded by people, or get them to do some, you know, shuffling around town, you know, half hour, you know, hour at a location and maybe relocate. And
my thoughts are the last thing I want is an outbreak of COVID from Park City's fireworks show.
And the only thing I'm worried about in a 2-night event is when you do that, you're really promoting it and asking more people to come. And I would like to really do something for our citizens. I know it's a huge draw that, you know, many businesses around here benefit from over that course of that weekend. But I think most places have kind of dialed back what they're doing. So, I mean, we need to talk about funds. How much does the council want to spend towards that? We have $10,000 budgeted. So if we're wanting to do more, then we need to figure out how we're going to work
You
that
do
out.
have the CNT money, which we have not picked up.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm using $1,700 of that for the car show, but other than that, the rest of that's going to go unspent.
Was it $10,000 for just the fireworks or for the whole celebration?
For just the fireworks.
Yeah, our entire celebration budget, if we were to do a full event with the pet show, ice cream, all that, is $24,000.
How much of the fireworks stand money is supposed to go to, or how is that allocation split up?
What has been traditionally done before is the proceeds from 2 stands, so $10,000. And then, as he mentioned, there's, I believe, $5,500 that's budgeted in CNT's budget to support. So from the city, it's a total of $15,500. And when he says it takes $24,000, that's on the sweat of their brow and all their good connections that they've made over the years with people that have been sponsors and donations and stuff along that line. Is it correct?
Correct, yeah, we're 15,000 as city, and the other roughly 10. We have a little bit of a carryover each year, and, you know, that's pretty much all donations.
Okay, anything else, Ben?
Have we looked at the idea of putting the firework display somewhere different in the park that might be an more open area? I know they would have to probably be reaching out to.
We'd have to do that pretty quick, because you have to provide an aerial layout. You have to look at distancing from the interstate, because you can't put the display right up against 135. You know, surrounding structures, would there be any impact, you know?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Tom?
Typically, in the past, we've spent $5,000 for fireworks.
City's total budget for us has been 10 plus 5,500 out of C&T. In the past, 5,000 of that was a tent that was ran by one of our members, so the license fee for that rolled back in. So it was 5 plus 5 plus C&T was what we received from the city.
So in reality, we've been spending $15,000 a year for fireworks.
Fireworks, you know, the event's been concert. I mean, the concert every year has been $3,000-4,000.
You were talking about the whole event.
The whole event is $24,000.
I just wondered if we could get something brought back to us. We've got a special meeting next week. Can we throw this at the beginning of it?
The special meeting's not until the 30th, sir.
30th, okay.
Yeah, pretty much. I talked to Stellar Fireworks, which is the vendor we used last year, and they're talking. I would have to have an okay to them in the next day or two for them to start ordering, because we're right up against, excuse me, the other one with the laser fireworks are actually past the day they said they needed to order, but I could still talk to them and see if that's the route you wanted to go, if they could do that or not.
I feel like I'm just shooting in the dark tonight because I don't know what we're buying. So
you're not buying anything.
Right.
Right now we have $10,000. Plus, we could look at the C&T money that we could use toward the fireworks show. It's either do you want to do one or not.
The only additional expense I could see you would have is we always pay for, you know, the fireworks company will normally co-insure the city. We've provided an additional layer of insurance in the past with our own policy. And the other expense would be law enforcement, because obviously, you know, we have had years where we've had city officials that try to do traffic patrol, and it's worked pretty terribly. So last several years, we've used law enforcement to handle our traffic control.
Well, this goes back to what was happening 40 years ago when there was just fireworks events and people showed up at the park on 4th of July and watched the fireworks, and if there was a band, there was a band, and if there wasn't, there wasn't. And then they went home. So we would be in light kind of doing what used to happen without all the other events. So I'd be in favor of going ahead and having it.
Okay, Brandy?
Steve, so with the fireworks, so the July events team is disbanding after this year. And I know at our meeting, we discussed that there is money carried over that we weren't sure what we were going to do with. So could some of that money be turned over to the city or donated to the city to help pay for some more fireworks?
Yeah, we had that brought up to us as far as if we can or can't. What I'm looking at right now, and I need to get hold of our CPA on this, is we do have a few $1,000s in the bank that we've carried over from one year to the next, and that we're either going to, it's going to depend on what the law is with the 501c3, because what I'd like to do is, you know, I really probably shouldn't even speak on this subject till I've talked to council, but we've got two possibilities, and that is the law says we have to roll that money over to another 501c3. What I'm trying to figure out is if we can issue a refund back to the city, and then we could earmark that for next year's event. I don't know if we could have it freed up in time for this year's event. That would be the only question. I can probably get an answer on that tomorrow or the next day, but I don't want to make a commitment where I can't make a commitment.
Doug, do you have any insight for us?
I think Steve needs to get his advice, but I'm pretty confident that it's not specifically another 501c3. It's a charitable entity, which the city qualifies as, a tax-exempt entity. So I think that likely would work, Steve.
Well, that is our number one preference, and just earmark that money to go towards the 4th of July show. We were discussing next year because we're at that point planning on doing this year's show, but at this point, then yeah, it could be used for either this year or next year.
And then I like the idea of the food trucks coming, and with them not being in Wichita, I feel like we could probably get more food trucks. We charge a permit fee to get them here now. Can we do something
It's
about?
$10.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, never mind. I thought it was more than that.
Okay. Ben?
Yeah, I would go ahead and put out here a motion that we approve a fireworks display by the city for $10,000, which is budgeted already. And then I guess from that point, what we need to do is, if we want to go over 10,000, look at CNT, but we have 10,000 in our budget already allocated for this. So I'd make a motion that we allow for that to be spent.
John, did you want to second that for discussion?
Let me clarify first. It's 10,000 plus CNT funds? Is the motion? Yes, I'll second that.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. So Steve will be working with you on that.
All right. I'll reach
get
out
you lined
to,
up, and we'll write the check so you guys don't have to worry
all
about
right, I'll get the process started tomorrow night with Sean on that.
Okay.
For a one-night show.
Thank you.
That was the last item on the agenda this evening. We'll move on to governing body reports, and we'll start with Jim.
I don't have anything to report tonight.
Randy?
Have nothing.
George?
I have one thing. I need to apologize to our attorney, Doug. When I was thanking everybody for all the hard work they did on this, I realized that Doug done a lion's share of it, and I apologize for the omission, sir. I really apologize. I feel bad about that.
You don't have to do that, George. If I told you how much time it took me, you might take your apology back.
I don't think
These
so.
these guys did all the work.
But I apologize, sir.
All right. Tom?
Don't have anything.
Melvin?
I'm good.
Ben?
Yeah, I do just want to real quick reiterate now that we're in our comment section here. A very huge thank you to our police force. I want to say thank you to Chief. I know you worked tireless hours making sure that everything was taken care of and provided for during that time. I also want to say thank you to each one of our officers because they all gave a lot of their time over these last 4 or 5 days as they pulled long shifts, strenuous situations going on. So to each one of our officers, to the spouses, to the children, to the parents, thank you very much.
Ben, that's not getting you out of that parking ticket.
George?
Also, thanks to the chief and the area agencies that have helped out with that threat. I do think it was a legitimate threat, and I think you guys handled it wonderfully. I checked with some of the business, and they were also appreciative of what you guys did in keeping them safe. Also with this coronavirus, just know, folks, that we're going to get through this. We're going to persevere and get through this virus. I know there's a lot of folks that have worriness or concerns. I always tell people to trust in the Lord. Let the Lord help you get through this, to focus on Him. And always, if you're having problems with mental illness or you're having depression or anxiety, there are places you can go to get help for that. ComCare, 211 Kansas. I know some of our folks with the unemployment is running out, or their $600, whatever their extra is running out. There are places in Wichita where you can actually get help to pay your rent, or utilities, water. You can check those out with Sedgwick County as well. So there are things that are available to you, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
What's the ComCare number? Since you're putting it out there, what's the number?
You would have to ask me that.
660-7500, right?
That's it.
Okay. All right. John?
I don't have anything. I would make a motion we adjourn.
And Ben?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you.